The fluorescent lights of Save More Pharmacy hummed too loud in Brianna Coleman's ears as she stood frozen at the counter. Her daughter Kennedy sat on the floor beside her, small chest rising and falling in rapid shallow movements that made a whistling sound with each breath. The 6-year-old's brown eyes were wide with fear, her small hands clutching at her mother's jean-clad leg. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the total for the albuterol inhaler is $287, the pharmacist repeated, her voice professionally sympathetic but firm. Her name tag read, Patricia, and she had kind eyes, but that kindness couldn't change the number on the screen. Brianna felt her throat close. She opened her worn purple purse with shaking hands and pulled out her wallet. Inside was a $10 bill and some loose change. That was it. That was all she had until Friday, still 3 days away, and even then her paycheck was already allocated to rent, utilities, and food. I don't have that much, Brianna whispered, her voice cracking. She looked down at Kennedy, whose breathing was getting worse by the minute. Please, she needs this now. Can I pay part today and part later? Can we do a payment plan? Patricia's expression softened further with genuine regret. I wish I could, but company policy doesn't allow payment plans for prescriptions. Do you have insurance? My insurance dropped her medication from coverage last month, Brianna said, fighting back tears. They said there were cheaper alternatives, but those don't work for her. The doctor submitted an appeal, but it takes weeks. She needs this today. Please. Other customers were lining up behind her now. Brianna felt their eyes on her back, felt the weight of their impatience and judgment. A woman in expensive athletic wear sighed audibly. A man in a business suit checked his watch. Kennedy made a worse sound, a tight wheeze that stabbed straight through Brianna's heart. The little girl's lips were starting to look slightly pale. Panic rose in Brianna's chest like a living thing, clawing at her ribs. Maybe I can call the doctor again, Brianna said desperately, pulling out her cracked cell phone. Maybe they can prescribe something cheaper, something generic that I can afford right now. That will take time to process, Patricia said gently. And honestly, I'm not sure there is a cheaper option that will work as quickly as she needs. Brianna looked around the pharmacy wildly, as if answers might appear on the shelves of bandages and vitamins. Her eyes landed on the emergency inhaler display, the ones that cost $40. She had 10. She was still 30 short, and those weren't even the right kind for Kennedy's chronic asthma. What if I just get the emergency one? Brianna asked, knowing it was foolish but desperate enough to try anything. Those are for mild symptoms, Patricia explained patiently. Your daughter needs the prescription strength. I can see in the notes that she was hospitalized twice last year. We can't risk it. Kennedy made another terrible sound. Other people in line were definitely staring now. Brianna felt shame burn through her, hot and acidic. She was failing her daughter. She worked 2 jobs, barely slept, gave everything she had, and it still wasn't enough. The $10 bill in her hand felt like a mockery. Please, Brianna said, and she was crying now, tears running down her cheeks unchecked. Please, there has to be something. She's 6 years old. She needs to breathe. Ma'am, I truly wish I could help, Patricia said, and she looked genuinely pained. But I don't have the authority to change the price. These are set by the insurance companies and the manufacturers. Behind her in line, a man cleared his throat. Brianna turned slightly and saw him, a tall man in a perfectly tailored blue suit. He looked to be in his late 30s with dark hair and sharp features. His watch probably cost more than her car. He was holding a simple prescription bag, already processed, but he hadn't left. He had been standing there, listening to everything. Their eyes met for just a second. His were an intense gray, and there was something in them that wasn't pity. It looked more like anger, but not at her. Brianna turned back to the counter, wiping her eyes roughly. Can I at least get just the inhaler and not the other medications? She asked. How much is it without the antihistamine and the nasal spray? Patricia typed into her computer. It brings it down to $243. Still impossibly far from $10. Brianna felt the world tilting. She put her hand on the counter to steady herself. Kennedy's breathing sounded worse. How long did they have before this became a true emergency? Before she had to call an ambulance they couldn't afford? Before her baby ended up in the hospital again with bills that would bury them? I'll call my sister, Brianna said suddenly. She might have some money. Can you hold the prescription for 20 minutes while I call her? Of course, Patricia said kindly. Take your time. Brianna bent down and scooped Kennedy into her arms, even though her daughter was getting too big for carrying. The little girl wrapped her arms around her mother's neck and buried her face in her shoulder. Brianna could feel each labored breath against her collar. It's okay, baby, Brianna whispered into Kennedy's curly hair. Mama's going to fix this. I promise. But she didn't know how. Her sister was a teacher, barely making ends meet herself with 2 kids. Her parents had passed away years ago. She had no one else to call. The thought of borrowing money made her stomach turn, but what choice did she have? She carried Kennedy toward the waiting area near the front of the store, past the man in the blue suit who was still standing there, past the impatient customers, past her own shattered pride. Have you ever had to choose between money and someone you love? Have you ever felt that helpless? If this story touches your heart, subscribe to hear what happens next and share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might encourage someone else who's struggling. Brianna set Kennedy down gently on one of the plastic chairs and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely dial. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Her sister would be at work. She might not answer. The ringing seemed to stretch into eternity. Hello? Her sister's voice finally came through. Tanisha, Brianna said, and her voice broke completely. I need help. I'll cover it. The voice came from behind her, deep and calm and certain. Brianna turned around so fast she nearly dropped her phone. The man in the blue suit stood there, his prescription bag still in one hand. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, maybe mid-30s, with strong features and eyes that held surprising warmth. What? Brianna breathed. The medication, he said, gesturing toward the pharmacy counter. I'll pay for it. All of it. Brianna stared at him. Her sister's voice was tiny and distant through the phone, asking what was wrong. Brianna couldn't form words. This didn't happen in real life. Strangers didn't just offer to pay hundreds of dollars for someone else's medication. I can't let you do that, Brianna finally managed, though every fiber of her being screamed at her to say yes, to accept, to get her daughter the medicine she desperately needed. Why not? He asked simply. Because it's too much money. Because I don't know you. Because I can't pay you back. He looked at her steadily. Your daughter needs to breathe. That's all that matters right now. Everything else is just details we can figure out later. Kennedy made another wheezing sound from the chair behind them. The man's expression shifted, something fierce crossing his features. Please let me help, he said, and there was an urgency in his voice now. I have the money. You need the money. Your daughter needs medicine. This isn't complicated. Brianna felt tears threatening again. Her sister was still talking on the phone, her voice rising with concern. Brianna lifted the phone back to her ear. Tanisha, I'll call you back, she said quickly. Brianna, what's happening? Are you okay? Is Kennedy okay? I think it's going to be okay. I'll explain later. She ended the call and looked back at the man. Every instinct told her not to accept charity from a stranger. She had worked so hard to provide for Kennedy on her own, to never depend on anyone after Kennedy's father had walked away. Taking help felt like admitting defeat. But Kennedy's breathing was getting worse. And this man was offering exactly what they needed, without conditions, without judgment. Just simple, direct help. Okay, Brianna whispered. Thank you. Thank you so much. Something in his expression relaxed. He nodded and walked past her toward the pharmacy counter. Brianna picked up Kennedy again and followed, her legs feeling weak. Patricia looked up as they approached, surprise crossing her face. We're ready to process the prescription, the man said smoothly, pulling out a black credit card. All of her medications, please. Patricia glanced at Brianna, who nodded. The pharmacist's face broke into a genuine smile as she processed the transaction. Within minutes, she was handing over 3 medication bags to Brianna. The inhaler is in the red bag, Patricia explained. 2 puffs every 4 hours as needed. If her breathing doesn't improve within an hour, take her to urgent care. Thank you, Brianna said, her voice thick with emotion. She immediately opened the red bag with trembling fingers and pulled out the inhaler. Following the pharmacist's instructions, she shook it and administered 2 puffs to Kennedy. Her daughter breathed it in desperately. They waited right there at the counter, all 3 of them watching Kennedy. After a few minutes, her breathing started to ease. The terrible whistling sound grew quieter. Color returned to her lips. The relief that washed over Brianna was so intense she felt lightheaded. Better, baby? She asked softly. Kennedy nodded, managing a small smile. Better, Mama? Brianna looked at the man, and the gratitude she felt was too big for words. I don't know how to thank you properly. You probably saved her from a hospital trip. You possibly saved her life. I'm glad I could help, he said simply. I'm Julian, by the way. Julian Hayes. Brianna Coleman, she replied, shifting Kennedy in her arms to shake his extended hand. And this is Kennedy. Hello, Kennedy, Julian said, and his entire demeanor softened as he looked at the little girl. I'm very glad you're feeling better. Kennedy, usually shy with strangers, gave him a small wave. They walked out of the pharmacy together, Brianna still feeling dazed by what had just happened. The afternoon sun was bright after the harsh pharmacy lights. Julian walked with them toward the small parking lot. I really will pay you back, Brianna said as they walked. It might take a while, but I promise I will. That's not necessary, Julian replied. It is to me, Brianna insisted. My mama raised me to pay my debts. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. All right. If it's important to you, we can arrange something. But there's no rush. Focus on your daughter's health first. Brianna nodded, appreciating that he understood. They had reached her car, a 15-year-old Honda with a dented bumper and rust spots. She felt self-conscious as she unlocked it, aware of how it must look next to whatever expensive vehicle he probably drove. Can I ask you something? Julian said as she buckled Kennedy into the back seat. Of course. You said at the counter that you work 2 jobs. What do you do? I work at a call center during the day and clean office buildings 3 nights a week, Brianna explained, straightening up and closing the car door softly. It's enough to cover our basics usually. But when unexpected medical costs come up. She trailed off, not wanting to complain to this man who had already been so generous. Julian pulled a business card from his suit jacket and held it out to her. I own a technology company downtown. Hayes Technology Corporation. We're always looking for good people. Would you be interested in coming in for an interview? Brianna took the card with shaking fingers. It was thick, expensive cardstock with embossed lettering. Hayes Technology Corporation. Julian Hayes, Chief Executive Officer. Below that was a phone number and email address. You're the CEO? She asked, looking up at him in shock. I am, he confirmed with a slight smile. And I mean what I said about the interview. You clearly work hard and care about doing right by your family. Those are the qualities I value most. But you don't know anything about my skills or experience, Brianna protested. I know you fight for what matters, Julian said. The rest can be taught. Call the number on that card on Monday morning. Ask for me directly. We'll set something up. Brianna looked down at the card, then back up at him. Why are you doing this? First the medicine, now a job offer. You don't even know me. Julian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Let's just say I believe in helping when help is needed. And I believe that sometimes one moment of kindness can change everything. Before Brianna could respond, he gave her a small nod and walked toward a sleek silver car parked a few spaces away. She watched him go, clutching the business card and the medication bags like lifelines. Kennedy's voice came from the back seat. Mama, is that man an angel? Brianna climbed into the driver's seat and looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror. Kennedy's breathing was almost normal now, her eyes bright and alert again. Maybe something like that, baby, Brianna said softly. Maybe something like that. She started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, but not before glancing once more at the business card on the passenger seat. Julian Hayes, CEO. A job interview. It seemed too good to be true, like a dream that would dissolve when she woke up. But the medication bags were real. Kennedy's improved breathing was real. And the card in her hand, with its raised lettering and professional design, was very real. That night, after Kennedy was asleep in their small apartment, Brianna sat at their tiny kitchen table and looked up Hayes Technology Corporation on her laptop. The company was huge, specializing in software development and IT solutions for major corporations. Their website showed a modern glass building downtown, sleek offices and smiling employees. Julian's photo was on the About Us page. Chief Executive Officer and Founder. The brief biography said he had started the company 10 years ago after working his way through college and business school. It mentioned his commitment to ethical business practices and employee welfare. There were photos of him at charity events and speaking at technology conferences. This was real. He was real. And he had offered her a chance at something better. Brianna pulled out her phone and looked at the text her sister had sent earlier. Call me tomorrow and explain everything. Are you really okay? She typed back, I'm okay. Kennedy's okay. Something amazing happened. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. I love you. Then she looked at the business card again, running her finger over the embossed letters. On Monday morning she would call. She would take the interview. She would accept this gift of hope that had appeared when she needed it most. Because Julian was right. Sometimes one moment of kindness could change everything. And maybe, just maybe, this was that moment for her and Kennedy. Monday morning came too slowly and too fast at the same time. Brianna had barely slept all weekend, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. She had rehearsed what she would say 1,000 times. She had Googled interview tips and read articles about Hayes Technology Corporation until she could recite facts about the company by heart. Kennedy was at school. Brianna sat in their small apartment living room, the business card on the coffee table in front of her, her phone in her hand. The call center shift didn't start until noon. She had time. She had Julian's direct number. She had been given this opportunity. So why were her hands shaking? Because this could change everything. Because she might fail. Because she had been struggling for so long that the possibility of something better felt dangerous to hope for. Mama always said fortune favors the brave, Brianna whispered to herself. It was something her mother used to say when Brianna was afraid to try new things as a child. Her mother had been gone for 8 years now, but the words still carried weight. Brianna took a deep breath and dialed the number. It rang twice before a professional female voice answered. Hayes Technology Corporation, Executive Office. This is Rachel speaking. How may I help you? Good morning, Brianna said, proud that her voice came out steady. My name is Brianna Coleman. Mr. Hayes told me to call this number and ask for him directly. He said to mention we met last Friday. There was a brief pause. One moment please, Miss Coleman. Classical music played softly through the phone. Brianna waited, her heart pounding so loud she was sure it could be heard through the line. This was crazy. CEOs didn't just take calls from random people. He probably had meetings all day. She was probably being transferred to some HR department where she would get a polite brush-off. Then a different voice came on the line. His voice. Brianna, Julian said warmly. I'm glad you called. How is Kennedy doing? The fact that he remembered her daughter's name made something warm bloom in Brianna's chest. She's doing much better, thank you. The medication is working perfectly. I can't thank you enough for what you did. I'm very glad to hear it, Julian said, and he sounded like he genuinely meant it. Now you're calling about that interview, I hope? Yes, Brianna confirmed. If the offer still stands. It absolutely does. Are you available to come in this afternoon? Say around 2 o'clock. Brianna's mind raced. Her shift at the call center started at noon and went until 8. She would have to call in sick, which she hated doing. But when would she get another chance like this? 2 o'clock works perfectly, she said. Wonderful. The address is on the card. When you arrive, just tell the front desk that you have an appointment with me. They'll direct you up. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Julian, please, he corrected gently. I'll see you this afternoon, Brianna. The call ended. Brianna sat frozen for a moment, staring at her phone. This was happening. This was really happening. She called the call center and explained she had a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie, she told herself. This job opportunity was about her family's future. Then she went to her closet and stared at the limited selection of clothes. She didn't have interview attire. She had work clothes for the call center, which were business casual but worn. She had old jeans and t-shirts for cleaning jobs. She had 2 dresses, one she wore to church and one from Kennedy's school program last year. The church dress was navy blue, simple and modest. Would have to do. She paired it with her only pair of nice shoes, black flats that pinched her toes a bit but looked professional. She spent extra time on her hair, pulling her natural curls into a neat bun. Light makeup. Small earrings. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. She looked like someone who might work in a fancy office building. She looked like someone who might belong in Julian's world, even if just for an hour. The bus ride downtown took 40 minutes. Brianna watched the city pass by the window, the buildings getting taller and newer as they approached the business district. She had been downtown before, but usually late at night when she came to clean the office buildings. During the day it looked different. Alive and bustling with people in suits carrying briefcases and coffee cups. Hayes Technology Corporation occupied a stunning glass building 20 stories tall. Brianna stood on the sidewalk for a moment looking up at it. The morning sun reflected off the windows, making the whole structure seem to glow. You can do this, she told herself firmly, then walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was breathtaking. High ceilings, modern art on the walls, comfortable seating areas with living plants. Everything was clean and bright and spoke of success. People moved through the space with purpose, some in business attire, others in more casual tech company clothes. Brianna walked to the reception desk where a young woman with bright red hair looked up with a friendly smile. Good afternoon, the receptionist said. How can I help you? I have a 2 o'clock appointment with Mr. Hayes, Brianna said. My name is Brianna Coleman. The receptionist typed something into her computer, then her eyebrows rose slightly. Of course, Miss Coleman. You're expected. Please take the elevator to the 20th floor. Someone will meet you there. Thank you, Brianna said, accepting the visitor badge the receptionist handed her. The elevator was glass on one side, offering a view of the city as it rose. Brianna watched Legos spread out below her, the buildings and streets and harbor becoming visible. She had lived here her whole life but had never seen it from this height. The 20th floor was just as impressive as the lobby. The elevator doors opened onto a spacious area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views. A woman in her 50s with silver hair stood waiting, the same professional voice Brianna had heard on the phone earlier. Miss Coleman, welcome. I'm Rachel Martin, Mr. Hayes's executive assistant. It's lovely to meet you in person. Thank you for having me, Brianna replied, shaking her hand. Right this way, Rachel said, leading her down a hallway. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee, tea. Water would be wonderful, thank you. They passed several offices and conference rooms. Through the glass walls, Brianna could see people working at computers, having meetings, collaborating on whiteboards covered in diagrams and notes. Everyone looked engaged and, surprisingly, happy. Rachel showed her into a comfortable waiting area outside a large corner office. Please have a seat. Mr. Hayes is just finishing up a call. He'll be with you in just a moment. Brianna sat in one of the plush chairs and accepted the glass of water Rachel brought her. She could see into Julian's office through the glass walls. He was on the phone, pacing while he talked, his suit jacket off and his sleeves rolled up. Even from here, she could see the intensity in his expression, the way he gestured as he spoke. This was his world. This was what he had built. And somehow, impossibly, he was offering her a place in it. The call ended. Julian looked up and saw her through the glass. His expression immediately shifted, the intensity melting into warmth. He smiled and waved her in. Brianna stood, smoothed her dress and walked into the office. Brianna, Julian said, crossing the room to shake her hand. Thank you for coming. Please sit. He gestured to a seating area away from his desk, more casual and comfortable. 2 chairs facing each other with a small table between them. Brianna sat, and Julian took the opposite chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. How are you feeling? He asked. Nervous. Terrified, Brianna admitted honestly, then worried she shouldn't have said that. But Julian laughed, a warm sound that eased some of her tension. Good. That means you care. Let me start by saying this isn't a traditional interview. I'm not going to grill you about your resume or ask you trick questions. I want to have a conversation. Okay, Brianna said, relaxing slightly. Tell me about yourself, Julian said. Not your work history, just you. What matters to you? What do you enjoy? What kind of life do you want to build? The question caught her off guard. She had expected to talk about skills and experience, not about herself as a person. I want to give Kennedy a good life, Brianna said slowly. I want her to grow up knowing she's loved and safe. I want to be able to take her to the doctor without panicking about the cost. I want her to go to college someday if that's what she chooses. I want to show her that hard work matters and that kindness matters and that we take care of each other. Julian nodded thoughtfully. And for yourself? What do you want? No one had asked her that in years. Maybe ever. Brianna thought about it. I want to use my brain, she finally said. I'm good at organizing things and solving problems. At the call center, I just follow scripts. At the cleaning job, I just follow a checklist. I want to do something where I can think and learn and grow. Where I can make a real contribution. That's exactly what I want to hear, Julian said. Because that's what this position would be. I need an executive assistant, but not just someone to schedule meetings and file paperwork. I need someone who can think independently, solve problems, manage complex situations, and help me run this company effectively. It's demanding work, but it's also rewarding. He went on to explain the role in detail. Managing his calendar and correspondence. Coordinating with department heads. Preparing reports and presentations. Attending meetings and taking notes. Handling confidential information. Being his right hand in day-to-day operations. The salary is $90,000 a year to start, with full benefits including comprehensive health insurance for you and Kennedy, Julian continued. 4 weeks paid vacation. Flexible schedule when you need it for family matters. And opportunities for advancement as you learn and grow in the role. Brianna's brain stuttered on the number. 90,000. She currently made 32,000 between both her jobs. This was almost 3 times that. With health insurance. This was more than she had dared to dream possible. That's very generous, she managed to say. It's fair for the work involved, Julian corrected. And frankly, I think you'd be excellent at this job. But you barely know me, Brianna said. How can you be sure? Julian leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. I saw how you handled that situation at the pharmacy. You were under enormous pressure, terrified for your daughter, completely out of options. But you didn't give up. You kept trying to find solutions. You kept your dignity even when the situation was humiliating. You cared for Kennedy even while you were falling apart inside. That tells me more than any resume ever could. Brianna felt tears prickling behind her eyes. She blinked them back. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Julian said simply. Take the job, Brianna. Let me help you build something better for you and your daughter. Everything in her wanted to say yes immediately. But she had learned to be careful, to question things that seemed too good to be true. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why me? You could hire someone with years of experience, someone who already knows this world. Why take a chance on someone like me? Julian was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because I built this company from nothing, he finally said. 10 years ago, I was working 3 jobs just like you, trying to save enough to start my own business. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like when one unexpected expense can destroy everything you've worked for. And I know what it feels like when someone gives you a chance. He stood and walked to the window looking out at the city. I had a mentor who believed in me when no one else did. He gave me my first real opportunity. He taught me that the measure of success isn't just what you build, but how many people you help along the way. So yes, I could hire someone with more experience. But I'd rather hire someone with heart and potential and give them the chance to thrive. Brianna stood as well, joining him at the window. From up here, the city looked full of possibility. Then yes, she said. I accept. Thank you, Julian. For the pharmacy, for this opportunity, for believing in me. I promise I won't let you down. Julian turned to face her, extending his hand. I know you won't. Welcome to Hayes Technology, Brianna. Can you start Monday? She shook his hand, feeling the firm grip, the warmth. I'll be here. As she left his office an hour later, after meeting some of the team and getting paperwork from HR, Brianna felt like she was floating. She rode the elevator down, walked out into the bright afternoon, and immediately called her sister. You're not going to believe what just happened, she said when Tanisha answered. And as she told the story, standing on the sidewalk in the sunshine, Brianna felt something she hadn't felt in years. Oh. The weekend before her first day passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Brianna gave her 2 weeks' notice at both jobs, though she felt guilty about it. Her co-workers at the call center threw her an impromptu celebration, genuinely happy for her good fortune. The cleaning service manager was less enthusiastic but professional. She took Kennedy shopping on Saturday, using the small advance Julian's HR department had provided for professional attire. They went to a discount store where Brianna carefully selected 3 blouses, 2 pairs of dress pants and a simple blazer. Nothing fancy but clean and professional. Kennedy helped her pick colors. Get the red one, Mama, she said, holding up a bright crimson blouse. Red is a power color. My teacher said so. Brianna smiled and added it to the cart. They also picked out a deep green blouse and a royal blue one. Bright, confident colors that made her feel capable when she tried them on. Sunday night, Brianna could barely sleep. She kept running through everything Julian and Rachel had told her about the role. She worried about making mistakes, about not being good enough, about discovering this whole thing was some kind of elaborate misunderstanding. But Monday morning came regardless of her worries. Brianna got Kennedy ready for school, made her breakfast, packed her lunch, and walked her to the bus stop like always. Kennedy hugged her extra tight before boarding. You're going to be great, Mama, the 6-year-old said with complete confidence. That nice man wouldn't have given you the job if he didn't think you could do it. Out of the mouths of children, Brianna thought. She kissed Kennedy's forehead and waved as the bus pulled away. Then she went home, got dressed in the red blouse and black dress pants, checked her appearance in the mirror 3 times and headed downtown. The morning commute was different from what she was used to. The bus was full of other people heading to office jobs, most of them absorbed in their phones or tablets. Brianna felt like she was joining a club she had only observed from the outside before. She arrived at Hayes Technology at 8:30, half an hour early as instructed. The same friendly receptionist from before greeted her. Miss Coleman, welcome back. Rachel is expecting you. Head on up to 20. The elevator ride up felt different this time. Before, she had been a nervous visitor. Now she was an employee. This was her workplace. These people were her colleagues. Rachel met her at the elevator with a warm smile. She wore a sophisticated green dress that looked both professional and comfortable. "Good morning, Brianna," she said. "Ready for your first day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Brianna replied with a nervous laugh. "You'll do wonderfully. Come on, let me show you to your office." Your office. The word sent a thrill through Brianna. She had never had an office before. At the call center, she'd had a cubicle like everyone else. At the cleaning jobs, she'd had a supply cart. Rachel led her down the hallway to a room right next to Julian's office. It was smaller than his but still impressive. A real desk with a new computer, a comfortable chair, file cabinets, and a small seating area. The window looked out over the city. "This is beautiful," Brianna breathed. "It's yours," Rachel said warmly. "Now, I'm going to be training you for the next 2 weeks before I transition to a different role in the company. Julian promoted me to Director of Operations, which is exciting for me and creates this opening for you." So that was why the position was available. Julian had promoted from within, and now she was filling the gap. That made Brianna feel slightly better, less like she was some charity case and more like a legitimate hire. Rachel spent the morning walking her through the computer systems, the filing procedures, and the daily routines. She showed Brianna how Julian liked his calendar organized, how to prioritize emails, how to prepare briefing documents for meetings. "He's very patient and understanding," Rachel assured her. "If you make a mistake, just tell him directly. He values honesty more than perfection. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Better to ask and get it right than to guess and get it wrong." Around 11, Julian appeared in the doorway. He wore a gray suit today with a blue tie that brought out the color of his eyes. He looked every inch the successful CEO, but his expression was kind as he looked at them. "How's it going?" he asked. "Very well," Rachel reported. "Brianna is a quick study." "I had no doubt," Julian said. He looked directly at Brianna. "How are you feeling?" "A little overwhelmed but in a good way," Brianna admitted. "There's so much to learn. Take your time. Rachel and I are here to help." He glanced at his watch. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes, but after that, would you like to join me for lunch in the cafeteria? I can introduce you around." "I'd like that," Brianna said. He smiled and disappeared back into his office. Rachel gave Brianna a knowing look. "He never eats in the cafeteria," she said quietly. "Usually he has lunch brought to his office so he can work through it. He's making an effort to help you feel welcome." The observation made Brianna feel warm inside. Julian was going out of his way to make her transition smooth. It wasn't just about giving her a job. He genuinely seemed to care about her success. Lunch in the company cafeteria was both nerve-wracking and wonderful. The space was modern and bright with floor-to-ceiling windows, multiple food stations, and comfortable seating areas. Employees gathered in groups, chatting and laughing. Julian guided her through the food options, recommended the pasta station, and then led her to a table where several people were already eating. They looked up as Julian and Brianna approached. "Everyone, this is Brianna Coleman, my new executive assistant," Julian announced. "Brianna, this is Michael Torres, head of software development. Lisa Bennett, head of marketing. And James Park, our CFO." They all greeted her warmly, making room at the table. Michael was a friendly man in his 40s with graying hair and an easy smile. Lisa was younger, energetic, with short curly hair. James was quiet and thoughtful, probably in his 50s. "Welcome aboard," Michael said. "Fair warning, Julian is going to work you hard. But he's also the best boss I've ever had, so it balances out." "I heard that," Julian said dryly, but he was smiling. They talked easily over lunch. Brianna mostly listened, getting a feel for the dynamics. These people clearly respected Julian, but they also seemed to genuinely like him. There was none of the tension or fear she had seen at other companies she'd cleaned for. The atmosphere was collaborative and positive. Lisa asked Brianna about her background, and Brianna gave a brief, honest summary without dwelling on the struggles. Lisa nodded approvingly. "We need more diverse voices in tech," she said. "Julian gets that. Half our executive team are women, and we have employees from 20 different countries. Diversity makes us stronger," Julian said simply. "Different perspectives lead to better solutions." After lunch, Rachel walked Brianna through more procedures. They reviewed Julian's schedule for the week, and Rachel explained the various recurring meetings and their purposes. Monday afternoon was department head check-ins. Tuesday morning was strategy review. Wednesday was flexible for project-specific meetings. Thursday afternoon was always blocked for deep work time. Friday morning was all company updates. "He's very structured," Rachel explained. But also flexible when something important comes up. You'll learn his rhythms quickly. By the end of the day, Brianna's head was spinning with information, but she felt exhilarated rather than exhausted. As 5 o'clock approached, she organized her notes and prepared to leave. Julian appeared in her doorway again. Heading out? He asked. Unless there's something else you need, Brianna replied. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. How was your first day? Honestly? It was wonderful, Brianna said. Everyone has been so welcoming. Thank you for lunch and the introductions. My pleasure. Same time tomorrow? I'll be here. Brianna gathered her things and headed for the elevator. On the ride down, she looked at her reflection in the glass walls. She looked different somehow. More confident. More like she belonged. The bus ride home gave her time to process everything. She had survived her first day. More than survived, actually. She had done well. Rachel had said so, and Julian had seemed pleased. Kennedy was at the neighbor's apartment when Brianna got home. Mrs. Chen watched Kennedy after school for a modest fee, and Brianna had kept that arrangement even though her new salary meant she could afford other options. Mrs. Chen needed the income and Kennedy loved her. Mama, Kennedy shrieked when Brianna knocked on the door, launching herself into her mother's arms. How was work? Tell me everything. Brianna laughed and scooped her up. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Come on, baby. Let's go home and I'll make us dinner while I tell you all about it. In their small apartment, Brianna made spaghetti while Kennedy sat at the kitchen table and peppered her with questions. What was her office like? Was Mr. Hayes nice? Did she have friends there? What did she do all day? Brianna answered each question patiently, enjoying Kennedy's enthusiasm. When dinner was ready, they sat together and ate while Brianna described the cafeteria, the view from her window, and the kind people she had met. I'm proud of you, Mama, Kennedy said seriously, twirling spaghetti on her fork. You're doing something important now. What I did before was important too, Brianna corrected gently. Taking care of you has always been the most important thing. This job just means I can take care of you even better. After dinner, after Kennedy's bath and bedtime story, after tucking her daughter into bed with kisses and promises of another good day tomorrow, Brianna sat in their small living room and let herself really feel the magnitude of what had happened. 1 week ago, she had been standing in a pharmacy with $10 and a daughter who couldn't breathe, feeling like the world was crushing her. Tonight, she was sitting in the same apartment, but everything had changed. She had a job that paid well. She had health insurance. She had opportunities to grow and learn. And it all started because one man had chosen kindness over convenience. Because Julian Hayes had been standing in that pharmacy and had decided that helping mattered more than minding his own business. Brianna pulled out her phone and typed a text message. Thank you again for everything. First day was wonderful. I won't let you down. The response came almost immediately. You already haven't. Sleep well, Brianna. See you tomorrow. She smiled at her phone, feeling something warm and hopeful settle in her chest. Tomorrow she would go back. She would learn more, do more, become more. This was just the beginning. The weeks flowed by faster than Brianna could have imagined. Each day brought new challenges and new lessons, but she found herself adapting more quickly than she had dared to hope. Rachel's training was thorough and patient, and by the end of the second week, Brianna was managing most of Julian's schedule independently. She learned that Julian started his days early, usually in the office by 7. She started arriving at 7:30, coffee already brewing in the small kitchen area outside his office. He always thanked her, and they developed a morning routine of reviewing the day's schedule together while the building was still quiet. She learned that he took calls with international partners late in the evening sometimes, so she kept her work phone on and available. The first time he called her at 8 in the evening to help locate a document, she answered on the second ring. After that, he knew he could count on her. She learned that he was demanding but never unreasonable, that he expected excellence but was quick to praise good work, that he pushed his team hard because he pushed himself harder. And she learned that despite his wealth and success, he was remarkably kind. It showed in small ways. The way he remembered everyone's names, from the newest intern to the parking garage attendant. The way he always asked, "How are you?" and waited for a real answer. The way he noticed when someone seemed stressed and offered help without being asked. One Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks into her new job, Brianna was reviewing quarterly reports when her phone rang. Kennedy School. Her heart immediately jumped into her throat. Miss Coleman? This is Nurse Peterson from Kennedy's school. She's okay, but she's had an asthma flare-up. We've used her emergency inhaler and she's stable, but we'd like you to come pick her up. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Brianna said, already grabbing her purse and shutting down her computer. She rushed to Julian's office. He was in a video conference with someone in Singapore, but he saw her face through the glass and immediately held up a finger to the camera. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Brianna said. "Kennedy's school called. Asthma attack. She's stable but I need to get her." "Go," Julian said immediately. "Right now. Is she okay?" "They said she's stable. Do you need someone to drive you?" "The school is 20 minutes across town. You could take my car." "The bus is fine," Brianna started to say. "Take my car," Julian insisted, pulling keys from his desk drawer. "It's the silver sedan in the reserved spot. Bring her back here if you want. I'll have Rachel clear the small conference room. She can rest there while you finish your work." Brianna took the keys with shaking hands. "Thank you. Thank you so much." She rushed to the parking garage and found the car easily. It was newer and nicer than any vehicle she had ever driven, but she didn't have time to be nervous about it. She programmed Kennedy's school into the GPS and drove carefully but quickly across the city. Kennedy was in the nurse's office, looking small and tired but breathing normally. The relief that flooded through Brianna when she saw her daughter was almost painful. "Hi, baby," Brianna said, kneeling beside the cot where Kennedy lay. "How are you feeling?" "Better now," Kennedy said. "I'm sorry, Mama. We were playing tag at recess and I ran too hard." "You don't need to apologize," Brianna said, kissing her forehead. "These things happen. Come on, let's get you home." "Actually," Kennedy said slowly, "Mr. Hayes said I could come to your work?" Brianna blinked. "How do you know that?" "The nurse called your work number first and he answered. He said to tell you the conference room is ready and he ordered soup from the deli down the street." Of course he had. Brianna felt emotion swelling in her chest. He had thought of everything, even ordering food so Kennedy would have something gentle on her stomach. "Do you want to come to Mama's office?" Brianna asked. Kennedy nodded eagerly, already sitting up. "I want to see where you work." The drive back downtown, Kennedy was quiet but alert in the passenger seat, looking out at the city with interest. When they arrived at Hayes Technology, Brianna took her hand and led her through the lobby to the elevator. "Wow," Kennedy breathed as they rose up the building. "You work way up high." "I do," Brianna confirmed with a smile. Rachel met them on the 20th floor with a warm smile. "You must be Kennedy. I've heard so much about you. Come on, we have a comfy spot set up for you." The small conference room had been transformed. There was a blanket on the couch, pillows propped up, and a children's movie queued up on the large screen. The soup Julian had mentioned was on the table, along with crackers and juice. "This is amazing," Brianna said, her voice thick. "Thank you, Rachel." "Thank Julian," Rachel replied. "He set it all up. Just let us know if you need anything." Kennedy settled onto the couch with her soup, eyes wide as she looked around. "Mama, your work is so nice." Brianna stayed with her for a few minutes, making sure she was comfortable and eating. Then she reluctantly returned to her office, leaving the conference room door open so she could check on Kennedy regularly. Julian was off his call and came to find her immediately. "How is she?" he asked. "She's good. Stable. Thank you so much for this. You didn't have to do all this." "Of course I did," Julian said simply. "She's your daughter. Family comes first. Always. I meant what I said about flexible scheduling." "You're very kind," Brianna said softly. Something flickered across Julian's expression, something she couldn't quite read. "You've thanked me for kindness more times than anyone I've ever met," he said. "As if it's something rare and unexpected." "In my experience it often is," Brianna replied honestly. Julian was quiet for a moment. "Well, you deserve better than that. You both do." He returned to his office and Brianna tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting. Julian had rearranged his afternoon, had thought about what Kennedy would need, had treated an unexpected situation not as an inconvenience but as simply what needed to be done. Around 3, Julian appeared in the conference room doorway. Brianna had been checking on Kennedy every 15 minutes, and she looked up from where she sat beside her daughter on the couch. "How's the patient?" Julian asked. Kennedy sat up straighter, suddenly shy. "I'm feeling better, sir. Thank you for the soup and the movie." "You're very welcome," Julian said, coming into the room. "And you can call me Julian. What are we watching?" "Finding Nemo," Kennedy replied. "It's my favorite." "Excellent choice. Mind if I watch for a few minutes? I have a gap before my next meeting." Kennedy looked at her mother for permission. Brianna nodded, surprised but pleased. Julian sat in one of the chairs near the couch and the three of them watched the movie together. During a quiet scene, Kennedy said, "Mama says you gave her this job. Thank you for that. She's much happier now." "I'm glad she's happy," Julian said, glancing at Brianna with a small smile. "She works very hard." "She always works hard," Kennedy said seriously. "She's the best mama in the world." "I believe that," Julian agreed. They watched a few more minutes until Julian's phone buzzed with a reminder. He stood reluctantly. "I have to get to that meeting, but it was lovely to meet you properly, Kennedy. I hope you feel completely better soon." "Thank you," Kennedy said. "You're nice. Mama said you were nice and she was right." Julian's expression softened. "Your mama is pretty nice too. Take care of each other." After he left, Kennedy looked at her mother with wide eyes. "He's really nice, Mama. And he likes you." "He's my boss," Brianna corrected gently. "He's nice to everyone." "No," Kennedy insisted with the certainty only children possess. "He likes you specially. I can tell." Brianna felt her cheeks warm. "Finish your soup, baby." But she thought about Julian's expression, the way he had dropped everything when Kennedy needed help, the way he had sat with them watching a children's movie when he probably had 100 more important things to do. She thought about how every morning he asked her how she was and listened to the answer. How he brought her coffee sometimes when she was deep in a project. How he never made her feel less than, despite their different backgrounds and circumstances. And she thought about how when he smiled at her, something in her chest felt warm and hopeful and maybe, just maybe, like the beginning of something more than just gratitude. But that was foolish. He was her boss. He was a millionaire CEO. She was a single mother still figuring out how to navigate this new world. Whatever kindness he showed her was just that, kindness. Nothing more. Still, that evening when they left the office and Kennedy hugged Julian goodbye with uninhibited affection, and he hugged her back with genuine warmth, Brianna felt something shift inside her. Hope was a dangerous thing. But sometimes it was also necessary. November brought cooler weather and a sense of rhythm to Brianna's new life. She had been at Hayes Technology for 2 months now, and she no longer felt like a nervous newcomer. Her confidence grew with each successfully managed meeting, each complex problem solved, each day that proved she belonged in this role. Kennedy's asthma had stabilized beautifully with the proper medication and regular checkups, which Brianna could now afford without panic. The new insurance covered everything. They had even been able to move to a slightly larger apartment in a better school district, though Brianna had been careful not to overspend despite her increased salary. Work had become the best part of her day, and she knew it wasn't just because of the job itself. It was because of Julian. They worked closely together every day, their professional relationship seamlessly efficient. She learned to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, to know when he needed information presented concisely versus when he wanted detailed analysis, to recognize when he was stressed and needed coffee and a 5-minute break to clear his head. And he in turn learned about her. He knew Kennedy's school schedule by heart now. He knew Brianna took lunch at her desk on Tuesdays because Kennedy had early dismissal and she wanted to leave promptly. He knew she was brilliant with numbers and terrible with small talk at corporate events, so he always stayed near her at company gatherings to provide an anchor. They talked about work constantly, but lately their conversations had been drifting into more personal territory. Nothing inappropriate, just small glimpses into each other's lives. His favorite books. Her love of old movies. His early failures in business. Her dreams for Kennedy's future. Have you ever felt yourself falling for someone and known you shouldn't, but couldn't help it anyway? If you're invested in Brianna and Julian's story, subscribe now because what happens next will surprise you. Leave a comment telling us what you think will happen. One Thursday evening in mid-November, Brianna was working late. Julian had a presentation due for the board meeting the next morning, and she was helping him finalize the slides. Most of the office had emptied hours ago. The only sounds were their voices, the click of the keyboard, and the soft hum of the building's systems. "Try moving that graph to the 3rd slide," Julian suggested, leaning over her shoulder to point at the screen. Brianna made the change, very aware of his proximity. He smelled like expensive cologne and coffee, a combination that had become comfortingly familiar. "Better?" she asked. "Perfect. You have a good eye for layout." They worked in comfortable silence for a few more minutes. Then Julian straightened up and rolled his shoulders, stretching out tension. "We should take a break," he said. "My brain is starting to melt. Want to raid the break room for snacks?" "Sounds perfect," Brianna agreed, saving the presentation. They walked down the quiet hallway to the break room. Julian grabbed 2 sodas from the refrigerator while Brianna found a bag of pretzels in the snack basket. They sat at the small table by the window looking out at the city lights. Can I ask you something? Julian said after a moment. Of course. Kennedy's father, he began carefully. You've never mentioned him. I don't mean to pry, but I've been curious about your story. Brianna took a sip of her soda, considering how much to share. But something about the quiet office and Julian's genuine interest made her want to open up. His name was Andre, she said slowly. We were together for 3 years. I thought we were building a future. Then I got pregnant, and suddenly that future didn't include him. He left. Julian's voice held an edge of anger. He was scared, Brianna said, trying to be fair even though the old hurt still stung. We were young, barely 22. He had plans for his life, and a baby wasn't part of them. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. I told him he didn't have a choice because I was keeping the baby. He left that same week. I haven't heard from him since. That's unforgivable, Julian said flatly. Maybe. But I can't regret it because it gave me Kennedy. She's the best thing in my life. Everything I've done since then, every struggle, every sacrifice, it's all been worth it for her. Julian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. You're an amazing mother, Brianna. The way you love her, the way you fight for her, it's remarkable. I just do what any parent should do, Brianna said, slightly embarrassed by the praise. No, Julian countered. You do more. You do it alone, without support, without complaint. That takes incredible strength. Can I ask you something now? Brianna ventured. Fair is fair. You mentioned before that you built this company from nothing. What was your life like before Hayes Technology? Julian leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the window. I grew up in foster care, he said, surprising her. My parents died in a car accident when I was 8. I didn't have any other family, so I went into the system. Bounced around between homes for 10 years until I aged out at 18. Julian, I had no idea, Brianna said softly. I'm so sorry. It taught me a lot, he continued. About resilience, about not depending on anyone, about building something that couldn't be taken away. I worked my way through community college, then university, then business school. Every step, I was working multiple jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and determination. That's incredible. It was necessary, Julian corrected. I didn't have a choice. And somewhere along the way I realized I wanted to build something that would help other people find their way up. That's why I started Hayes Technology. Not just to make money, though that's nice, but to create opportunities. To hire people who maybe don't have perfect resumes but have heart and drive. To build a company culture where people feel valued. You've definitely done that, Brianna said. Everyone here seems genuinely happy. I try. I know what it's like to be at the bottom, to feel like the system is rigged against you, to wonder if things will ever get better. I never want anyone working for me to feel that way. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Both of them had fought their way up from difficult circumstances. Both of them knew what struggle meant. Both of them had turned pain into purpose. Thank you for telling me, Brianna said finally. It helps me understand you better. And you, Julian replied. Thank you for sharing about Kennedy's father. I know that wasn't easy. It's easier with you, Brianna admitted, then felt her cheeks warm. I mean, you're easy to talk to. You don't judge. Why would I judge? Julian asked. We've all made choices based on the circumstances we faced. We've all done the best we could with what we had. That's all anyone can ask. Brianna looked at him across the small table, really looked at him. The sharp features she had first seen in the pharmacy had become familiar and dear. She knew the small scar above his left eyebrow that he got from a childhood accident. She knew how his eyes crinkled slightly when he was amused. She knew the way he ran his hand through his hair when he was frustrated. And she knew she was developing feelings that went far beyond professional respect or grateful friendship. It terrified her. He was her boss. He had saved her from financial ruin. He had given her this opportunity. Getting emotionally involved would be a disaster. It would complicate everything. She could lose her job, lose the stability she had worked so hard to build for Kennedy. But her heart didn't care about logic. Her heart had already started down a path she couldn't seem to redirect. We should get back to the presentation, Brianna said, standing abruptly. If Julian noticed her sudden shift in mood, he didn't comment. They returned to her office and worked for another hour until the presentation was polished and perfect. Then Julian insisted on calling her a car service to get home since it was so late. I can take the bus, Brianna protested. At 11 at night? Absolutely not. Let me do this, Brianna. Please. She accepted because arguing seemed pointless. Julian walked her down to the lobby and waited with her until the car arrived. The driver held the door open and Brianna slid into the back seat of the comfortable vehicle. "Thank you," she said to Julian through the open window. "For everything tonight. The conversation, I mean. Not just the ride." "Anytime," Julian said, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Sleep well, Brianna." On the drive home, Brianna stared out the window at the passing city and tried to untangle her emotions. She was grateful to Julian, yes. She respected him deeply. She admired his success and his kindness. But it was more than that. She looked forward to seeing him every morning. She felt lighter when he smiled. She caught herself thinking about him at random moments throughout the day. She wondered what it would be like if circumstances were different, if they had met some other way, if the power dynamic between them wasn't so complicated. When she got home and paid the babysitter who had stayed late with Kennedy, she checked on her sleeping daughter and then sat in the quiet living room with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "Made it home safe?" She smiled despite herself and typed back, "Yes. Thank you again. Good. See you tomorrow." Such simple words. Such a normal exchange. But Brianna held her phone and felt that dangerous warmth spreading through her chest again. Oh, possibility. The beginning of something that probably shouldn't happen but felt inevitable anyway. She was falling for Julian Hayes. And somehow she suspected he might be falling too. The question was what they would do about it. Late May brought warm sunshine and the announcement of Hayes Technologies' annual summer picnic. The event was held at a large park on the outskirts of the city, with activities planned for employees and their families throughout the entire Saturday. Julian personally stopped by Brianna's office to extend the invitation. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and she was working through a complex scheduling issue involving 3 departments and 1 conference room. "Do you have a moment?" he asked from her doorway. "For you?" "Always," Brianna replied, looking up from her computer. 6 months into this job, and the sight of him still made her heart skip slightly. She had gotten better at hiding it, she thought, but the feeling persisted. Julian came in and sat in the chair across from her desk. He was in his shirt sleeves today, the blue fabric rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Brianna deliberately kept her eyes on his face. "The company picnic is this Saturday," he said. "I wanted to personally invite you and Kennedy. I know it's last minute and you might have plans, but it would mean a lot if you came." "We'd love to," Brianna said, meaning it. "Kennedy has been asking when she'll get to visit Mama's work again. She loved meeting everyone last time." That had been 2 months ago when Kennedy had another minor asthma flare at school, and Brianna had brought her to the office for the afternoon. Julian had emerged from meetings twice to check on her, bringing coloring books and snacks, making Kennedy giggle with silly jokes. The entire office had doted on the little girl, and she had left declaring that Mama's work was the best place ever. "Perfect," Julian said, and his smile was warm. "The picnic starts at 10. There will be games, food, and activities for kids. Very casual. Just a chance for everyone to relax together outside of work." "We'll be there," Brianna confirmed. Saturday arrived bright and sunny. Brianna dressed herself and Kennedy in comfortable clothes, both wearing bright colors. Kennedy insisted on her yellow sundress with flowers, and Brianna chose green capri pants and a white cotton blouse. They looked fresh and summery as they arrived at the park just after 10. The company had really gone all out. There were tents set up with tables and chairs, a catering truck serving lunch, game stations with everything from cornhole to giant Jenga, a face-painting booth, and an area with bounce houses for children. Music played from speakers and employees were already gathering in groups, laughing and talking. Brianna held Kennedy's hand as they walked into the park, suddenly feeling shy. This was different from the office. This was social, personal, and she had never been good at large gatherings. "Brianna," Rachel called out, waving from a table near the food tent. She was with her husband and their teenage son. "Over here." They joined Rachel's group, and immediately Brianna felt more comfortable. Rachel introduced her husband, Tom, and their son, Daniel. Other colleagues came over to say hello. Michael from software development was there with his wife and 2 young daughters. Lisa from marketing arrived with her girlfriend. James the CFO came solo but was soon engaged in an intense cornhole game with the IT department. Kennedy's eyes were wide as she took in all the activities. "Can I go to the bounce house, Mama?" she asked hopefully. "Let me come with you," Brianna started to say. "I'll take her," a familiar voice said. Brianna turned to find Julian approaching. He wore casual clothes she had never seen him in before, dark jeans and a green polo shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. He looked younger, more relaxed, and somehow even more attractive than usual. "Mr. Julian," Kennedy exclaimed happily. "Just Julian, remember?" he said, crouching down to her level. "Want to go check out that bounce house? I heard there's a really cool obstacle course one." Kennedy looked at her mother for permission, practically vibrating with excitement. Brianna nodded, touched by Julian's offer. 30 minutes, Brianna told Kennedy. "Then come find me for lunch." She watched Julian take Kennedy's hand and lead her toward the children's area. Several employees nearby watched too, their expressions interested. Brianna knew there had been some quiet speculation about her and Julian, though nothing inappropriate had ever happened. They were just close, that was all. Just friends and colleagues who got along well. "He's good with her," Rachel commented, appearing beside Brianna. "He is," Brianna agreed, unable to keep the warmth from her voice. "He never came to these picnics before," Rachel continued casually. "In the 7 years I worked for him, he showed up for maybe an hour, made the rounds, then left. This year he cleared his whole day. Interesting, don't you think?" Brianna glanced at her sharply. "Rachel." "I'm just saying," Rachel replied with a knowing smile. "I've known Julian a long time. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." "He's my boss," Brianna said firmly, though her heart was beating faster. "He's a good man who deserves happiness," Rachel countered. "And so do you." Before Brianna could respond, Rachel's husband called her over to help settle an argument about the rules of cornhole, and Brianna was left standing alone with her thoughts. Did Julian look at her differently? She had convinced herself she was imagining things, reading into kindness because she had developed feelings she shouldn't have. But Rachel knew him well. If she noticed something, maybe it was real. Brianna shook her head to clear it. This was a company picnic, not a place for romantic speculation. She needed to socialize, to be a normal employee enjoying a normal event. She joined a group playing lawn games and tried to focus on having fun. She was surprisingly good at cornhole, beating Michael twice in a row and earning applause from the gathering crowd. She laughed genuinely, feeling lighter than she had in years. When Kennedy came running back exactly 30 minutes later, cheeks flushed and eyes shining, Julian was right behind her with an indulgent smile. "Mama, it was so fun," Kennedy gushed. "Julian went through the obstacle course with me 3 times. And he won me this at the ring toss." She held up a small stuffed bear proudly. "That's wonderful, baby," Brianna said, hugging her. She looked at Julian over Kennedy's head. "Thank you for taking such good care of her." "My pleasure," Julian said. "She's excellent company. Now who's hungry? I heard the burgers are ready." They got food together, Kennedy chattering nonstop about all the games she wanted to play. Julian carried both his plate and Kennedy's, naturally helping without being asked. They found seats at a table with several other employees and their families. Brianna watched Julian interact with her daughter throughout lunch. He listened to Kennedy's stories with genuine interest. He asked her about school and her friends. He made her laugh with silly jokes. He treated her with the same respect and kindness he showed everyone, but there was something extra there, something tender. After lunch, Kennedy wanted to get her face painted. Julian offered to take her again, but Brianna shook her head. "You've been so generous with your time," she said. "You should enjoy the picnic, talk to other people." "I'll take her." "I am enjoying the picnic," Julian said, meeting her eyes. "I'm exactly where I want to be." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Brianna felt her breath catch. Around them, the picnic continued with laughter and games and conversation, but for a moment it felt like they were alone. "Okay then," Brianna said softly. "Let's go get Kennedy that face painting." They spent the rest of the afternoon together, the 3 of them. Julian pushed Kennedy on the swings. They played a game of frisbee that Kennedy mostly watched from the sidelines, cheering them on. When Kennedy wanted ice cream from the vendor, Julian bought cones for all 3 of them. It felt like family. It felt like what Brianna had always wanted for Kennedy but never thought they would have. A man who was kind and present and genuinely cared. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. As the afternoon wore into evening and families started packing up to leave, Julian walked them to Brianna's car. Kennedy was exhausted and happy, chattering sleepily about what a perfect day it had been. "Thank you for coming," Julian said as Brianna buckled Kennedy into the back seat. "It meant a lot." "Thank you for spending the day with us," Brianna replied. "You really didn't have to." "I wanted to," Julian said simply. "Brianna, He paused, seeming to wrestle with what to say. "Yes," she prompted, her heart racing. "I just want you to know that you and Kennedy are important to me," he finished. "Not just as my assistant. As people I care about. As friends. Friends? The word should have been reassuring, but somehow it felt limiting. Still, Brianna nodded and smiled. You're important to us too, she said honestly. Kennedy talks about you all the time. You're her favorite person after me. I think she might be my favorite person too, Julian admitted with a warm smile. Tied with her mother. They stood in the parking lot as the evening deepened around them, other employees calling goodbyes and driving away. The moment stretched, comfortable and charged at once. Finally Brianna said, "We should get home. Kennedy's going to fall asleep in the car." "Drive safe," Julian said, stepping back. Brianna got in the car and started the engine. Through the windshield, she could see Julian still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching them. She waved and he waved back. As she drove home through the twilight, Kennedy already dozing in the back seat, Brianna thought about the day. About Julian's patience with Kennedy, his easy integration into their afternoon, the way he had looked at her when he said she was important to him. Rachel's words echoed in her mind, "I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Maybe. Just maybe. Something was growing between them that was more than professional respect, more than friendship, more than gratitude. And maybe, despite all the reasons it was complicated, it was worth exploring. The storm arrived on a Tuesday evening in late June with shocking violence. The weather forecast had predicted rain, but not the torrential deluge that began pounding the city just after 6 in the evening. Brianna had brought Kennedy to the office that day because school was out for summer and her regular babysitter was sick. Julian had insisted it was fine, had set Kennedy up in the small conference room with books and art supplies, had checked on her throughout the day with snacks and conversation. Now, as rain hammered against the windows and thunder rolled across the sky, Brianna stood at the window of Julian's office watching the streets below turn into rivers. "This is bad," she murmured. Julian joined her at the window, his expression concerned. "The roads are flooding. City emergency services just sent out an alert telling everyone to shelter in place if possible and not to drive." Brianna pulled out her phone and checked the weather app. The storm was expected to last at least 3 more hours, possibly into the night. The roads were already impassable in several areas. "Kennedy and I will wait it out here," Brianna said. "We'll be fine." "Actually," Julian said slowly, "my house is only 10 minutes away, and the route doesn't go through any of the flood zones. You could shelter there, be more comfortable, have actual food and somewhere for Kennedy to sleep if the storm lasts past her bedtime." Brianna hesitated. Going to Julian's house felt like crossing a line somehow, moving from professional to personal in a way she had been carefully avoiding despite her growing feelings. But Kennedy was in the conference room, and it was already past her dinner time. The office was fine for working but not ideal for spending an entire evening with a 7-year-old. Julian's offer made practical sense. "Are you sure?" she asked. "We don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Julian assured her. "Come on, let's get Kennedy and head out before it gets worse." 20 minutes later, they were pulling into the driveway of Julian's house in his car, rain still pouring. The house was beautiful, a modern 2-story with large windows and clean lines. Inside, it was tastefully decorated with comfortable furniture, hardwood floors and walls of bookshelves. "Wow," Kennedy breathed, looking around with wide eyes. "This is so nice." "Thank you," Julian said, helping her out of her wet jacket. "Are you hungry? I can make dinner while we wait for the storm to pass." "You cook?" Kennedy asked, surprised. "I do," Julian confirmed with a smile. "I'm actually pretty good at it. How do you feel about pasta?" "I love pasta," Kennedy said enthusiastically. Brianna followed them into the kitchen, which was spacious and well-equipped. Julian moved around confidently, pulling out ingredients and cookware. He set Kennedy up at the island with a cutting board and a butter knife, showing her how to tear fresh basil leaves for the sauce. "Can I help?" Brianna offered. "You can keep us company," Julian said. "Tell me about Kennedy's summer plans." As they talked and cooked, the domesticity of the moment struck Brianna. This felt natural, comfortable, like something they had done 100 times before. Julian was patient with Kennedy, teaching her cooking terms and letting her help in small ways. Kennedy glowed under his attention, asking questions and chattering about everything. The pasta was delicious, homemade marinara with fresh basil and garlic bread that Julian had somehow whipped up effortlessly. They ate at his dining table while rain continued to batter the windows and lightning occasionally lit up the darkening sky. After dinner, Julian showed Kennedy his library. An entire room dedicated to books, with floor-to-ceiling shelves on every wall and comfortable reading chairs scattered throughout. Kennedy gasped with delight. "You can read any book you want," Julian told her. Pick whatever interests you. Kennedy immediately started exploring, running her small fingers along the spines of books, pulling out volumes to examine. Brianna watched her daughter's joy and felt emotion swelling in her chest. She loves to read, Brianna explained to Julian quietly. I try to get her library books, but we don't have space for many at home. She's welcome to visit the library anytime, Julian said. Or borrow books to take home. I'd love to share them with someone who appreciates them. Thunder crashed overhead and Kennedy jumped slightly. Julian noticed immediately. The storm is loud, isn't it? He said to her gently. But we're safe in here. The house is very strong. I'm okay, Kennedy said bravely. I like your library. It's like Beauty and the Beast when the Beast gives Belle all those books. Julian laughed. I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. Though I hope I'm not as scary as the Beast. You're not scary at all, Kennedy assured him seriously. You're the nicest man I know. Except maybe my grandpa, but he's in heaven. Something tender crossed Julian's expression. I'm honored to be compared to your grandpa. They spent the next hour in the library, Julian and Brianna sitting in the comfortable chairs while Kennedy explored. She brought books to show them, asked questions about stories, and finally settled on the couch with an illustrated collection of fairy tales. The storm raged outside, but inside the house felt warm and safe. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in brief stark moments before darkness fell again. Thunder rumbled like a living thing. Kennedy started yawning around 8:30, struggling to keep her eyes open as she read. Brianna noticed and started to suggest they try to get home, but Julian was already checking his phone. The roads are still flooded, he reported. Emergency services is asking everyone to stay where they are. I think you should stay here tonight. I have a guest room with a comfortable bed. You'll be much safer waiting until morning. We can't impose like that, Brianna protested weakly, though she knew he was right about the roads. It's not an imposition, Julian said firmly. It's just practical. Kennedy is tired. You're both safe here. We'll have breakfast in the morning and then I'll drive you home or to work, whatever makes sense. Please, Mama? Kennedy added sleepily. I like it here. Brianna looked at her daughter's tired face and made the decision. Okay. Thank you, Julian. We'll stay. Julian showed them to the guest room, which was lovely with soft blue walls and a large comfortable bed. He provided towels and extra clothes that would be too big but would work for sleeping. He brought Kennedy a glass of water and made sure she had enough pillows. Sleep well, he told them. My room is just down the hall if you need anything. After Kennedy was settled in bed, already half asleep, Brianna went back downstairs to find Julian. He was in the living room stoking a fire in the fireplace. The storm continued outside, but the house felt like a haven against it. She's out, Brianna reported. Thank you again for all of this. Stop thanking me, Julian said with gentle exasperation. You don't have to thank me for every kindness, Brianna. I was raised to be grateful, she said, sitting on the couch near the fire. Julian sat beside her, not too close but near enough that she could feel his warmth. They watched the fire in comfortable silence for a moment. Can I tell you something? Julian finally said. Always. Today, having you and Kennedy here, cooking dinner together, sharing the library, this is the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever. He turned to look at her directly. This house has always felt empty. But with you here it feels like a home. Brianna's breath caught. Julian. I know this is complicated, he continued. I know I'm your boss and that makes things difficult. I know we have to be careful. But I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's not just gratitude for having a good assistant. It's not just friendship. It's more than that. I feel it too, Brianna whispered, finally allowing herself to admit it out loud. I've been trying to keep it professional, but I can't help it. When I'm with you, everything feels right. You make me feel seen and valued and cared for in ways I never have before. Julian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. But she didn't want to. His hand covered hers on the couch between them, warm and strong. I don't know how to navigate this, he admitted. I've never been in a situation like this before. But I know I don't want to hide how I feel anymore. I care about you, Brianna. Deeply. And I care about Kennedy like she's already part of my life. This could get complicated, Brianna said even as she turned her hand over to lace her fingers with his. What if it doesn't work? What if it affects my job? Then we'll figure it out, Julian said simply. Together. Because I think what we have here, what we could build, is worth the risk. They sat in the firelight holding hands while the storm raged outside. No more words were necessary right then. The admission had been made. The feelings acknowledged. The decision to move forward together to see where this path led had been reached. Eventually, Brianna went back upstairs to check on Kennedy and prepare for bed herself. But before she left the living room, Julian stood and gently pulled her into a hug. She melted into his embrace, her head against his chest, his arms strong and safe around her. "Thank you for today," he murmured into her hair. "For letting me into your life." "Thank you for wanting to be in it," Brianna replied. They held each other for a long moment, the fire crackling behind them, rain still falling outside, the world reduced to just this space, this moment, this beginning. When Brianna finally went to bed in the guest room, Kennedy already fast asleep beside her, she stared at the ceiling and let herself really feel everything. The fear was still there, yes. But beneath it was something stronger. Hope, joy. The sense that maybe, after all the struggle and heartache, she was finally finding something beautiful and lasting. Tomorrow would bring new complications and conversations. But tonight, in this safe house with this good man and her beloved daughter, everything felt perfect. Morning came bright and clear, the storm having passed completely in the night. Brianna woke to find Kennedy still sleeping peacefully beside her and sunlight streaming through the guest room windows. For a moment, she wondered if the previous evening had been real or just a beautiful dream. Then she heard sounds from downstairs. Cooking sounds. The smell of coffee and bacon drifting up. She slipped out of bed quietly and pulled on the borrowed clothes from last night, suddenly shy about seeing Julian after their conversation by the fire. Everything felt different now, charged with possibility and nervous energy. Kennedy stirred as Brianna was brushing her teeth in the guest bathroom. "Mama?" she called sleepily. "Right here, baby," Brianna said, coming back into the bedroom. "Good morning. Did we really sleep at Julian's house?" Kennedy asked, sitting up and looking around as if to confirm it was real. "We did. The storm made the roads too dangerous to drive. But we're safe and I think Julian is making breakfast." Kennedy's face lit up. She scrambled out of bed and they got dressed quickly, then headed downstairs together. Julian was in the kitchen wearing jeans and a casual blue t-shirt, his hair slightly mussed from sleep. He looked up when they entered and smiled, and Brianna felt her heart skip. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I hope you both slept well." "Best sleep ever," Kennedy announced, climbing onto one of the kitchen bar stools. "What are you making?" "Scrambled eggs, bacon, and I have fresh fruit and toast." "Is that acceptable?" "It's perfect," Kennedy said happily. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen island, conversation flowing easily. Julian asked Kennedy about her summer reading list. She told him about the library program she had signed up for. He suggested some books from his collection that she might enjoy. Brianna mostly listened, sipping her coffee and watching the easy interaction between Julian and her daughter. It felt natural, comfortable, like they had been doing this for years instead of months. After breakfast, Kennedy asked if she could look at the books in the library one more time before they left. Julian readily agreed and showed her to the room, then returned to the kitchen where Brianna was helping clean up. "We should talk," he said quietly. "About last night. About what happens next." "I know," Brianna agreed, nervous butterflies taking flight in her stomach. They moved to the living room, sitting in the same spots as the night before. Daylight made everything feel more real, less like a moment stolen outside of time. "I meant everything I said," Julian began. "But I also understand if the morning brings second thoughts. This is complicated. I don't want to pressure you into anything that makes you uncomfortable." "I don't have second thoughts about my feelings," Brianna said carefully. "But I do have concerns about the practical aspects. How do we do this without it affecting my job? What do we tell people at work? What if it doesn't work out between us?" "All valid questions," Julian acknowledged. "Here's what I think. First, regarding your job, it's completely secure regardless of what happens between us personally. You're excellent at what you do and that won't change. If our relationship doesn't work out, you can absolutely keep working for me if that's what you want. Or I can help you find another position in the company or elsewhere. Your career is yours, not dependent on our romantic status." Brianna nodded slowly. That was reassuring but still complicated. "As for work," Julian continued, "I think we keep things professional at the office. We're already close as colleagues. People might speculate, but as long as we maintain appropriate boundaries during work hours, I don't see an issue. We can tell HR, of course. Full transparency is important. But we don't have to make a big announcement to everyone." "And if it doesn't work out?" Brianna asked, needing to hear him address that fear. Julian reached across and took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her skin. "Then we handle it like adults. with respect and care for each other. But Brianna, I need you to know that I'm not going into this casually. I don't date much. I don't do short-term relationships. When I commit to something or someone, I'm all in. I'm not asking you to be all in right away, but I need you to know where I stand. His words settled something anxious inside her. This wasn't just attraction or convenience for him. It was real, serious, considered. I don't date at all, Brianna admitted. I haven't since Kennedy's father left. I've been too focused on survival, on providing for her, on building some kind of stability. The idea of letting someone into our lives, of trusting them with Kennedy's heart and mine, it's terrifying. I understand that, Julian said gently. And I'm asking you to trust me with something precious. I don't take that lightly. They sat in silence for a moment, hands joined, both considering the magnitude of what they were beginning. Okay, Brianna finally said. Let's try. Let's see where this goes. But we take it slow. Kennedy has to come first. I won't let her get hurt. I wouldn't want you to, Julian assured her. Kennedy's well-being is just as important to me as yours. And we have to be honest with each other, Brianna continued. If something isn't working, if one of us is uncomfortable, we talk about it immediately. Agreed. And if this does work, Brianna added, a small smile playing at her lips, if we really do this, then you need to know that Kennedy and I come as a package. I'm not just dating as an individual. You're taking on both of us. That's exactly what I want, Julian said, and the sincerity in his voice made Brianna's eyes sting with unexpected tears. I don't just have feelings for you, Brianna. I've already grown to care deeply about Kennedy. The idea of being in both your lives, of being someone you can count on, it's what I want most. Brianna blinked back the tears and squeezed his hand. Then let's do this. Carefully, thoughtfully, but let's really do this. Julian smiled, the expression transforming his face with joy. Yeah. He stood and pulled her up with him, and then they were standing very close, his hands on her waist, her hands on his shoulders. The moment stretched, anticipation building. Can I kiss you? Julian asked softly. Please, Brianna whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind. But she didn't want to. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle and sweet and full of promise. His hands tightened slightly on her waist, pulling her closer. Her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on. When they finally pulled apart, both a little breathless, Julian rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for months, he admitted. Me too, Brianna confessed with a soft laugh. A small sound from the doorway made them both look up. Kennedy stood there, eyes wide, a huge grin spreading across her face. Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now? She asked with 7-year-old directness. Brianna felt her face heat up, but Julian just laughed and held out a hand to Kennedy, who ran over immediately. Maybe we are, Julian said, looking at Brianna for confirmation. Maybe we are, Brianna echoed, smiling. Yes, Kennedy cheered, bouncing on her toes. I told you he liked you specially, Mama. Can Julian be my friend too? Like a really special friend? I would love to be your really special friend, Julian told her seriously. If that's okay with your mama. It's more than okay, Brianna said, her heart feeling so full she thought it might burst. They spent the rest of the morning at Julian's house, laughing and talking and planning. Kennedy showed Julian her favorite books from his library. Julian promised to take them both to the museum next weekend. Brianna texted her sister with the news, receiving an enthusiastic response full of emojis and demands for details. When they finally left to go home so Kennedy could get fresh clothes and Brianna could prepare for work the next day, it felt bittersweet to leave the haven Julian's house had become. But Julian drove them home, helped carry their things upstairs to the apartment, and stayed for a little while to meet the neighbor Mrs. Chen who Kennedy talked about so much. He was charming and respectful, and Mrs. Chen looked at Brianna with knowing approval after he left. That one is good, she said in her accented English. You keep him. I intend to, Brianna said with a smile. That evening, after Kennedy was in bed, Brianna sat in their small living room and marveled at how much life could change. 2 months ago, they had been at a company picnic beginning to acknowledge feelings. 1 month ago, they had been carefully professional while emotions built beneath the surface. Last night, they had sheltered in a storm and let down all the walls. And today they were beginning something real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. Missing you already. Is it weird to say that when I just saw you an hour ago? She smiled and typed back, not weird at all. I'm missing you too. Good. Because I'm already thinking about next weekend and all the weekends after that. Sleep well, beautiful. You too. And Julian? Thank you for being patient with me. For waiting while I figured things out. You were worth the wait. You'll always be worth the wait. Brianna held her phone to her chest and closed her eyes, feeling happiness bubble up from somewhere deep inside. This was real. This was happening. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe that maybe happy endings were possible after all. 6 months passed in a blur of happiness and adjustment. Brianna and Julian navigated their relationship with care, taking things at a pace that protected Kennedy while allowing their feelings to deepen. They told HR about their relationship, and the company was supportive, assigning Brianna a different direct supervisor for performance reviews while maintaining her role as Julian's executive assistant. Work dynamics shifted slightly but remained professional. Colleagues who had suspected something were happy for them. Those who hadn't been paying attention barely noticed a change. Brianna continued excelling in her role, earning respect based on her own merits. Outside of work, their relationship flourished. Julian became a constant presence in Brianna and Kennedy's life. Weekend outings to museums, parks, and movies became their routine. Dinners at Julian's house or at their apartment happened several times a week. Julian attended Kennedy's school events, helped with homework, and read bedtime stories with the same patience and care Brianna did. Kennedy bloomed under the attention. She called him Julian but treated him with the easy affection of someone who felt safe and loved. She drew him pictures that he displayed in his office. She saved jokes to tell him. She asked his opinion on important matters like which book to read next or whether purple or blue was a better color. Brianna watched the relationship between the man she loved and her daughter with wonder and gratitude. Julian never tried to replace Kennedy's absent father. He simply showed up, consistently and lovingly, as someone she could count on. And Brianna herself had never been happier. Julian was everything she could have hoped for and things she hadn't known to hope for. He was patient and kind, ambitious but grounded, successful but humble. He listened when she talked and remembered details. He supported her career growth while respecting her boundaries. He loved Kennedy genuinely. He made her feel cherished. Safe. Home. They had talked about the future in general terms but hadn't made specific plans. Brianna knew she loved him. She was fairly certain he loved her. But saying the words, taking the next steps, those felt momentous and slightly scary. Then came the Tuesday morning in mid-December that changed everything. Brianna arrived at work to find Julian's office dark and Rachel looking concerned. He called this morning, Rachel explained. Said he'd be in late, something personal came up. He didn't give details. That was unusual. Julian was always at work by 7, almost obsessively punctual. Brianna tried calling him but the calls went straight to voicemail. She texted with no response. By 10 she was genuinely worried. By 11 she was considering filing a missing person report, which was probably dramatic but the fear felt real. Then at 11:30 Julian finally called. "I'm so sorry for worrying you," he said immediately when she answered. "I'm fine, I promise. Something came up that I needed to handle. Can you clear my schedule for the rest of the day?" "Of course," Brianna said, relief flooding through her. "Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm better than okay," Julian said, and there was something in his voice she couldn't quite identify. "Trust me. I'll explain everything later. I'll pick you up at 5 when you're done work." "Okay," Brianna agreed, confused but trusting him. The rest of the day passed slowly, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was he sick? Had something happened with the company? Was there a family emergency she didn't know about? At 5 o'clock sharp, Julian's car pulled up outside the building. Brianna hurried out and slid into the passenger seat, immediately studying his face for clues. He looked fine. Actually, he looked excited, his eyes bright with barely contained emotion. "What's going on?" Brianna asked as he pulled into traffic. "You'll see," Julian said mysteriously. "First, though, how would you and Kennedy feel about going somewhere special this evening? Somewhere meaningful." "That depends on where," Brianna said cautiously. "Kennedy's at Mrs. Chen's, but I can pick her up." "Already handled," Julian said with a smile. "I called Mrs. Chen. She's bringing Kennedy to meet us." "Julian Hayes, you are being very mysterious and it's making me nervous," Brianna said, though she was smiling despite herself. "Don't be nervous," Julian assured her, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "I promise this is good." They drove for about 15 minutes, and Brianna's confusion grew when they pulled into the parking lot of Save More Pharmacy. The same pharmacy where they had first met 8 months ago. "Why are we here?" Brianna asked, utterly baffled. "Come on," Julian said, getting out of the car. Brianna followed him into the pharmacy, noting that it looked different somehow. There were flowers near the pharmacy counter. Balloons. Aunt Patricia the pharmacist was there in formal clothes instead of her usual uniform, beaming at them. Then Mrs. Chen appeared from one of the aisles, holding Kennedy's hand. Kennedy wore her favorite yellow dress and was grinning from ear to ear like she knew a wonderful secret. "What is happening?" Brianna asked, her heart starting to pound. Julian took both her hands in his, standing in the middle of the pharmacy under the fluorescent lights where 8 months ago she had been crying and desperate. "This is where our story began," Julian said softly. "This is where I saw you fighting for your daughter with nothing but love and determination. This is where I realized that sometimes fate puts you exactly where you need to be. This is where my life changed completely, even if I didn't fully know it yet." Tears were already forming in Brianna's eyes. "Julian. I've spent this morning," he continued, "getting permission from the pharmacy owner to be here after hours. I've been setting up flowers and balloons and arranging for the people who matter to be here with us. Because I wanted to come full circle, to bring us back to the beginning as we start something new." He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Then, in the middle of the pharmacy where 8 months ago he had been a kind stranger and she had been at her lowest point, Julian Hayes dropped to one knee. Brianna gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth. Kennedy let out a little squeal of excitement. Patricia the pharmacist and Mrs. Chen were both crying and smiling. "Brianna Coleman," Julian said, looking up at her with so much love in his eyes that she felt overwhelmed, "you are the most remarkable person I've ever met. You're strong and kind and brilliant and beautiful. You're an amazing mother. You're my best friend. You make every day better just by existing. I love you completely and I love Kennedy like she's already my daughter. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you both, supporting you both, building a future with you both?" He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond that caught the pharmacy lights and sparkled like captured stars. Brianna was crying fully now, tears of joy streaming down her face. Through the blur, she could see Kennedy bouncing excitedly, see Mrs. Chen dabbing her eyes with a tissue, see Patricia recording this on her phone with shaking hands. "Yes," Brianna said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Julian. Of course yes. I love you so much. We both do." Julian stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and then they were kissing while Kennedy cheered and clapped and ran over to hug both of them. Julian scooped Kennedy up with one arm while keeping the other around Brianna, holding them both close. "You're going to be my real dad now?" Kennedy asked Julian, her voice hopeful and certain at once. "If you'll have me," Julian said seriously, "I would be honored to be your dad in every way that matters." "Yes," Kennedy said, hugging his neck tight. "I've been wishing for you." Patricia came over with congratulations and explained that Julian had called her weeks ago to arrange this, wanting to propose where their story had begun. Mrs. Chen hugged everyone and cried happy tears. And Brianna stood in the middle of it all, wearing an engagement ring, holding the man she loved while he held their daughter, and felt like the luckiest person in the world. They went to dinner after, the four of them counting Mrs. Chen, who Julian insisted should celebrate with them. At the restaurant, Kennedy couldn't stop talking about the wedding, about having a dad, about their family. Later that night, after Kennedy was asleep and Brianna and Julian sat on her apartment couch, she looked at the ring on her finger in wonder. "I can't believe you arranged all that," she said. "Going back to the pharmacy, getting Patricia and Mrs. Chen there, all of it." "I wanted it to be meaningful," Julian explained. "That pharmacy is where everything changed for both of us. Where kindness led to opportunity, led to friendship, led to love. It felt right to come full circle there." "It was perfect," Brianna said, leaning against him. "Everything about this is perfect." "So what do you think?" Julian asked. "Long engagement or should we get married soon?" Brianna thought about it. Part of her wanted to plan a big wedding, to have time to do everything right. But another part of her, the part that had learned that life was unpredictable and happiness should be grabbed when it appeared, wanted to start their future immediately. Soon, she decided. Small wedding, just family and close friends. Why wait when we're already sure? "I love the way you think," Julian murmured, kissing the top of her head. 3 months later, on a bright Saturday in March, they got married in the library of Julian's house, surrounded by books and the people they loved. Kennedy was flower girl, wearing a beautiful green dress and taking her duties very seriously. Rachel was maid of honor. Michael stood up as best man. Brianna wore a simple ivory dress and carried a bouquet of white roses. Julian wore a dark blue suit that brought out his eyes. They said their vows surrounded by colleagues who had become friends, by Mrs. Chen who had become extended family, by Kennedy, who was already calling Julian Dad. The ceremony was short but meaningful. They promised to love and support each other, to build a life together, to be partners in everything. They promised Kennedy a home full of love and safety and opportunity. And when Julian kissed his bride while everyone cheered, Brianna thought back to that terrible day in the pharmacy when she had $10 and a daughter who couldn't breathe. She thought about how one moment of kindness had changed absolutely everything. She thought about how far they had come, how much they had built, how lucky she was to have found this man who loved her and Kennedy so completely. The reception was held in Julian's backyard, which had been decorated with lights and flowers. There was dinner and dancing and toasts. Kennedy danced with Julian, standing on his shoes while he waltzed her around. Brianna danced with her new husband under the stars, feeling joy bubble up like champagne. At the end of the night, as guests were leaving and Kennedy had fallen asleep on the couch inside, Julian pulled Brianna close for one more dance in the quiet yard. "Happy?" he asked. "Beyond words," Brianna replied. "Thank you for choosing us. For seeing us that day in the pharmacy. For changing our entire world." "Thank you for letting me in," Julian countered. "For taking a chance on me. For building this beautiful life together." They swayed slowly to music only they could hear, a family now legally and officially and in every way that mattered. Inside the house, their daughter slept peacefully. Around them, the evidence of celebration remained. Ahead of them stretched years of love and growth and joy. It had all started with $10 and an act of kindness. It had led to friendship, to partnership, to love. And now it had become this: a family, a future, a forever. Brianna looked up at her husband under the stars and thought about the woman she had been 8 months ago. Struggling and scared and certain that life would always be hard. That woman could never have imagined this happiness, this security, this love. But she had been wrong. Life could change in an instant. One moment of kindness could alter everything. Hope could lead to healing. Love could build bridges between worlds. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, the stranger who helped you in your darkest moment could become the person you built your whole life with. "I love you," Brianna said simply. "I love you too," Julian replied. "Always and forever." They stayed there in the quiet yard, holding each other as night deepened around them, the future bright with possibility, their hearts full of gratitude and joy. It was the beginning of their forever. And it was absolutely perfect.